There are so many different social media sites out there that if I were to go through all of them today, it would be a very long presentation. These are the most popular ones that I know of that people are using today, especially young adults. Let's start with Facebook. Facebook currently has about 550 million users and growing. These are active users. There's actually people on there who are inactive that don't count in that number. Facebook is the #1 social media network, and surprisingly enough, it is 35 and older being the largest demographic of users. So that's pretty interesting. Twitter, on the other hand, is a micro-blogging site that allows users to tweet, or aka text, a 140-character message to their followers. You get to choose who you follow and what information you want to see. And then MySpace, which is not quite as popular as it used to be. MySpace was created back in 2004. It was one of the very first social networks as we know them being social networks today. And it was initially a place for unsigned musicians to share their music, and eventually it became popular with young adults. It has now currently dropped in popularity due to the launch and success of Facebook, but still heavy users are the younger adults around the 18 age group, and musicians are definitely, they're going back to that whole musician unsigned acts kind of thing where people can post their music. So it's a really great resource for musicians. So here are some main concerns that I hear people talking about in terms of having their kids online. The #1 concern, which has really gained in the media lately, is cyberbullying. A couple of facts about cyberbullying. 58% of kids admit someone has said mean or hurtful things to them online, and more than 4 out of 10 say it has happened more than once. 53% of kids admit having said something mean or hurtful to another person online, and more than 1 in 3 have done it more than once. So you can see there's an overlapping there, and a lot of times the people who are being bullied are oftentimes also going out and bullying others online. And then, interesting enough, 58% have not told their parents or an adult about something mean or hurtful that happens to them online. So it's important to look for the warning signs in terms of cyberbullying. So let's go over some of the things that you can notice in terms of if your child is being bullied. Some things that you might notice is your child is avoiding using computers, cell phones, and other technological devices. Your child appears stressed when receiving an email, instant message, or text. They may withdraw from the family and friends, act reluctant to attend school and social events, avoid conversations about computer use. They may exhibit signs of low self-esteem, including depression and/or fear. They have declining grades, they stop eating or sleeping, and in serious cases, they could consider suicide, and that's what we've seen in the media in recent months. So it's definitely something you want to look at. If your child is being bullied, teach them to not respond to it. Just ignore the bullying, and then save the evidence so that the proper people can be notified, whether it be a school or the parents of the bulliers, or to report it to the website or the internet service provider that they're seeing that through. So you should also think about meeting with school administrators to discuss a plan of action and talk about the situation with the bullies, parents, and guardians, which I just mentioned. So those are some things about cyberbullying. Some other concerns can be it can also be a portal into an adult world where you may not want them to go. You know, there's a lot of pornography, there's violent content, there's content that maybe is more adult related that you don't really necessarily want your kids to have access to. So that's definitely a concern. Children have a tendency to overshare personal information, whether it be personal information about them, where they live, or where they go to school, or even giving out passwords and emails and addresses. So that's definitely a concern. And then going back to, you know, being in a portal of an adult world, you also have that concern about predators. The stranger is dangerous still out there, only it can be more dangerous online because of the relationship that can be built online to build trust between a stranger and your child. So those are definitely some concerns. So here are some do's if you have a child or a teenager who is online. Number one, do your homework. Seek to understand the social mediums that your child is participating in. Find out, what is your child using? Are they using Facebook? Are they using Twitter? Make sure that you understand how to use those particular sites if that's the case, and seek to understand how they work. And then take an active role. You know, if you have a teenager who is on Facebook, why don't you ask your teenager to help you set up a Facebook account for yourself and then friend your teenager? But just make sure you're not embarrassing them. You know, be active but in the background. And then educate your children. Educate them on what's safe, what is appropriate in terms of what they're doing online. Like I mentioned before, stranger is danger. That still exists, and that's definitely a concern. So teach your children that just because they're chatting with someone or they share photos with someone does not make that person an instant friend or no longer a stranger. And then teach your children to think before they act. Remember that the internet is written in ink. It cannot be easily erased. So make sure that they really think critically about what they're doing, what they're presenting, and what they're putting out there, because they can't take it away once it's online. And then make sure that you're setting privacy settings per site and per the child's age. Each social network has their own type of privacy settings, so you can really customize it to what you think is appropriate for your child. And then set a time limit per day. I've heard of parents who have rules where as much time as you're spending online socializing, that you have to take that out of the online world and go outside and play or spend time with peers in the real world. There is studies that show that people who spend too much time online actually become depressed. And it's important to understand that just because you're being social online does not really constitute a social life. So it's really important that your children are still being active outside of the internet realm. And then figure out what you as a parent are comfortable with, and then discuss that with your children. So let's talk about some don'ts. Don't assume. Do not assume that your children already know how to act, how to present themselves, and what you are comfortable with. So you really have to sit down with them and discuss those guidelines. And then don't avoid. Just because you don't understand it or you don't feel like it's appropriate just based off of your knowledge does not mean that you should avoid it completely. You really need to educate yourself on what's out there. And then importantly, don't disallow your child to use this technology, because they will find another way. Not only do cell phones allow you to get on the internet, but they can go to a friend's house. If they have access to a library, they can get on the internet. If they're at school, they generally can get on the internet and use these sites. So they'll find another way. And children tend to like to push those boundaries. So cutting them off completely and not really discussing the guidelines is probably not a good move, because they're probably going to find another way. And then don't go too far. Respect their personal boundaries and help to build that trust. I mean, you have to trust that you have raised your children in a way that they respect the conversations that you have and the guidelines that you have set up together. So don't go too far and push them away or embarrass them, which is the last one there. Don't embarrass your teen or child. Play an active role, but in the background. So it's okay to be friends with your kids on these social networks, but don't be sharing, baby photos or embarrassing facts about your children, because that's going to really upset them. And a lot of kids are very sensitive about that. So this is a pretty important point. Do not let your fear of social media or lack of knowledge scare you away from allowing your kids to participate in online activities. This may set them behind. It's important to realize that technology is not stopping where we are right now. Technology is only going to get bigger. Social media is only going to get bigger. And if you take your kids out of it altogether, they're going to be set behind from their peers in the knowledge that goes with utilizing these tools. So just be sure that you're allowing your kids to use it, but in an appropriate manner. All right, so here are some tips for protecting your kids online. Number one, which we've kind of already mentioned, is set some ground rules. Figure out what you're comfortable with. Sit down with your child or your teen and discuss what are the ground rules for using social media. This next one, keep computers in a central place, is something that I have seen a lot from the psychological experts and the counselors and the professionals who deal with child psychology and child safety online. Pretty much everyone says keep that computer in a central place so you always know what's going on and your child isn't tempted to go to sites that are not necessarily appropriate because the computer is in the living room or in the dining room or wherever it may be instead of in your child's room. Know where your children go online. Check the browsing history. Maybe think about downloading some software that will not only block out inappropriate sites, but also can tell you where your child is going and what they're browsing and looking at. And then teach internet safety. Teach your kids to communicate responsibly. Teach them to know what is safe, what is not, and how to present themselves online. Because again, we don't want to assume that they know that already. And then teach kids to view web content critically. This is really important because as people who have grown up or have lived through the beginning of the internet age, we have learned to filter out things like pop-ups and spam that come at us, and we don't necessarily see that message that pops up and says free ringtone, click here. Whereas a child will see that and they're like, oh cool, free ringtone, and they click, and then they're putting in personal information into a form, and it's really difficult because that's a way that a child's identity can be taken. Your child has a social security number. Their identity is just as much at risk as your identity, and in a lot of times it can be even scarier because your children aren't thinking critically. They don't know what is right and what is wrong. So those are some things that you need to discuss them. The free offer isn't always free, and that's something that we need to teach our children. So a couple of myths in general about whether you're using social media for personal use, to keep up with your kids, or to use in a business realm, which is where I do a lot of training at. The first myth is it takes way too much time to use social media. This is a big myth. If you are planning on using social media pretty heavily, and you have several different sites, there are different tools that you can use to make yourself more organized and keep everything in one place. So if you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, WordPress, MySpace, you have all these different sites and you want to keep it consolidated, you can use tools like Hootsuite, Ping FM, or TweetDeck and really keep everything in one nice little package where you can schedule tweets out, where you can see what everything's happening and what's going on, and you don't have to go to all these different sites and waste your time. The second one here is only teenagers and college students use social media. This is a huge myth. LinkedIn alone, their major demographic is 45 plus professionals. Like I mentioned before, Facebook, the largest growing demographic is 35 plus. So there are adults on here. They're utilizing this. Not only are adults utilizing these tools, but businesses are utilizing these tools as well. The next one is people only talk about what they are eating or that they are shopping for shoes. It's just not relevant to me. This is a big one, especially on Twitter. I get this a lot. I don't want to know what people are having for lunch. Well, then don't follow those people. The great beauty about places like Twitter or Facebook is that you get to choose who you're following. You get to choose the people who are giving relevant information that's value added to your life and your situation. As someone who's in social media, I like to follow a lot of social media people, a lot of marketing people and business people, and they post a lot of great tips, blog posts about things I'm interested in, or news articles, and it's a really great resource for me. I don't want to lose my privacy. So this is another one that's kind of big that people have issue with. They think that just because they're online that, they are giving away all their information. The interesting thing is whether you're online or not, people can find information about you. That's the beauty of Google, or the scary thing about Google, I guess. But what's really great is when you get online, when you're using these social networks, you can really control the privacy settings and tighten it up if you want. In fact, I know for a fact that Facebook has a stealth mode where you can really go undercover. So there are ways to control your privacy online. And then the last one here, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings by not friending or connecting to them. I get this a lot because I have a lot of clients who like to connect with me via Facebook, and I try to keep my Facebook very private. It's just my friends and family, and so I'll just send people messages that want to connect with me. I appreciate you wanting to connect with me, but I try to keep this more friends and family, and I'd love to connect with you. Why don't you check me out on my Facebook fan page, which is my business page, or if you're on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn and we can network on there. And most times if you explain yourself or what you're trying to do, people are going to be really understanding. This is my presentation for today. To find out more information about myself or my business, Stellar Media Marketing, you can visit us online at www.stellarmediamarketing.com. And feel free to email me at stellarmediamkt@gmail.com. And I would love for you all to link up with me on LinkedIn. I am at linkedin.com/in/Kelly M. Noble. So feel free to send me questions and share this with your friends. Thanks so much.